Hey guys, welcome back to FunBikes YouTube channel. I'm Finn and today I'm going to be showing you the build and assembly process of our brand new FunBikes FunKart 2000w. So we can get it from looking like this to this. Let's get this thing out of the box. So now we've got our FunKart out of the box and the cage. I'm now going to quickly talk you through what tools you're going to need for this assembly and what parts came in the FunKart itself. So for the tools you'll need for this assembly, the first thing you will need is a pair of wire cutters, 5mm Allen key, a 21mm socket, a 13mm socket, a 12mm spanner. You may need two of these, but if you only have one, it will work. A 13mm spanner, a 15mm spanner, and you'll also need a ratchet. They're all the tools you will need for this assembly. So now I'm going to talk you through all the parts that came with the FunKart. So moving on to the parts that you come with. 4 nice big wheels. You'll receive your seats. The bigger cage part, you'll receive 2 of these. I'm just going to show you one, but you will receive 2. Rear basket cage, the steering wheel with your harnesses and a few more cage parts. You'll receive a little bag here which will have your rubber cover, 2 harnesses. You'll receive your rear netting. You'll get a bag of bolts, which I'll run through in a minute. And finally, you'll receive your charger. So, moving on to the bubble wrapped items over here, you will get steering wheel, your wheel covers, some more cage parts, your final cage part, and finally you should receive your rear basket. So now, as you can see, we've got all our bolts, nuts and washers out of this little bag here. I'm now going to run you through all what these bolts are and what they're going to be used for. So starting off on the left here, you'll have 5 of these long bolts, 2 different sets of washers, and these nuts here. Here we'll have 4 little nuts. These will be for the underside of your seats. Here we've got 4 more bolts and 4 more nuts. These will be for your rear cage basket. And then finally on the right here, again, you'll have 6, but there's an example here. So you'll have 6 of these green bolts, 6 washers, and 6 nuts. Should look like this. So now I've explained to you what the bolts are for. We can now start getting on with the assembly process. Let's get into it. So guys, now we can finally move on to the assembly process. The first step you're going to want to do is to get your wheels on. The reason being is because if you are building it on a stand, you can see it can be quite unstable. So this just adds a little bit of protection in case it does fall, which it shouldn't. So you're going to want to grab your rear wheel first, which you'll notice the rear as the hole in the middle is splined, which will match onto the rear axle. You will also need a 30mm socket and a nice big ratchet here. So what you're going to want to do is take off this big nut. There'll also be a big washer behind. So now we can fit the rear wheel, but the valve for putting air in the tyre will not be on the outside on these, it'll be on the inside. Bit different, but you can still access it nice and easily. So slide your wheel on nice and easily. Now you can grab a washer and you can put the big nut back on. So now once this is tight, we can now move on to the front wheel. So now we've got the rear wheel fitted, we can now move on to the front wheel. So the front wheel, slightly different. You can see just a straight through hole, which will match onto here. Again, the valve here, want to be on the inside. You want to grab 21mm socket on the same ratchet. And take this nut off. And there'll be a washer and a little space that will come off with it. So you can now slide our wheel on nice and easily. You just want to put the little spacer on first, then your washer, and then your wheel nut. And now you can make sure this is as tight as possible. Once that's nice and tight, if you repeat these steps on the other side, it will be the exact same process, just obviously on the left side. So moving on to the next part of the assembly, we're going to be attaching and installing the seat. So for this, you're going to need a 13mm spanner. You'll need the 4 nuts I showed earlier. So first thing you're going to want to do is grab your seat. It'll come in this big bag. I want to take this off. So now I have the plastic off. You can see we're going to line up here on the bottom. You'll see the 4 little prongs here. You can just remove these little black caps And these little prongs are going to slot here, the two back ones here, and the two front ones in here. This can be a bit fiddly. You can use a second person if you need a hand, as this isn't the lightest thing. So you want to line up these holes, like so. So once that's sat nicely, you're going to have to get under the vehicle. Loose. We can now grab your ratchet, start tightening these. So now you've tightened all four of those bolts. You can see your seat is nice and secure. So now we can move on to the next part of the assembly. So now we've got our seat fully installed, we can move on to the next part, which is going to be our harnesses. Your harnesses will come in a bag like this. Obviously I've got one here, ready to show you. So these can be quite tricky and fiddly, so I'm going to try and show you the best I can to make it as easy for you. So you're going to want to unravel your harness, try and make it as straight as possible. So your buckle, you're going to want to slide them through these gaps here, push them all the way through. Again, trying to keep it untwisted. So they'll go all the way through. There we go. If it helps, you can buckle them together to try and see if it's twisted or not, because you can always adjust it. So once you've got it through, you're going to want to grab your 13 and 15mm spanner. You're also going to want to grab one of the nuts, the washer, and the bolt itself. And you want to put your bolt through the harness, through the hole, with the washer on it. And then you can screw the nut on. We'll tighten it after, just to make sure everything's sitting nicely. So now, I want to grab another set of washers and a nut for the next one. So once you've got this bolt in on the back, you're going to grab the right sides. As you can see, there's another buckle. This will slide down the side in between the seat and the frame, out this gap here. And again, if it's twisted, you can adjust it here. But before that, we're going to put our bolt on, nut on the back. So with that, your second one is now on, and we can now move on to the third bolt. So again, you want to grab a bolt, a washer, and a nut. And you want to grab the left side of the harness. You can grab the final buckle. Now this one's a bit tougher. Put it right in the middle of the seat. You can test it with your hands first. You'll find a gap, which this has got to slide through. You want to poke it through, and then you can reach down, grab it and pull it further through. Grab your bolt and nut. So again, bolt through, and nut on the other side. So now we've got all three bolts on. You can now see if the harness is tangled at all. If it is, you can adjust it, or you can make it a bit neater and tighten everything. It's nice and not twisted, nice and tidy. We're now going to want to grab our 13 and our 15mm spanner. Now we're going to go around and tighten all these bolts. Sure, these are nice and tight. Let's tighten the bolts with. So now we've got this right side nice and tight, ensuring all these bolts are perfectly tight, as this is quite an important safety feature. You want to make sure you do the exact same process on the left. Feed it through, all the bolts in, nice and tight. Let's move on to the next part. So moving on to the next part of the assembly process, we're going to be installing your steering wheel. This is a nice and easy step. What you're going to need is your steering wheel, and you'll need two 12mm spanners. So the first step you're going to want to do is take out this bolt here in the steering column, put it down to the side just for now. So now you can grab your steering wheel, making sure it's facing up with the bottom spoke here. You want to slide it on and line up this hole to this hole here. There you go. Line up the holes, and the bolt should slide straight through. So then you've put the nut on this side. And now you can grab the two 12mm spanners, and you can just make sure this is nice and tight, like so. But now you can see your steering wheel is nice and secure. Now let's move on to the next part of the building process. So we're moving on to the next part of the assembly. We're going to be starting the cage off. So first thing you want to do, grab one of the big sides of the cage. But as you'll see here, this little metal sticky out bit, what I'll do is that is for your rear basket. So you want to make sure that this is facing inwards. So for example, this will be on the right side, and obviously when it's flipped over, that'll be for the left side. So for this, you're going to need, again, 2 12mm spanners, and you'll need 1 or 2 of these, as I showed earlier. So what you want to do, you want to grab your cage, and you just want to plonk that on top of that one. It will slide onto there. They do sit quite nicely. So now you can grab a nut and bolt and a few washers. The black washer want to be on the outside, like so. And you put your nut on the other side, should slide straight through. Again, put the nut on the other side. Now for this, we're not going to tighten these just now. What we're going to do is we're going to put the whole cage on, then tighten all the bolts, as it makes it easier to fit, because when they're tight, it can be quite hard to pull them down and get them into position. So we'll move on, get this side on, and we can get the rest of the cage on. So now we've got both sides of these cages on. Finger tight, don't want to tie them just yet. We're now going to move on to the side parts of the cage here. See what you want to do, grab it like this. So you want to take this bolt out of the end here, like so. There we go. So once that's out, you can then put this end on this one here, and then here you see 2 holes. We'll be using the bottom one here. So you just want to line up with the hole, just finger tight for now, so it's not going to come off. And again, we're going to get another one of these, and this one is going to go at the bottom here. Alright, so you want to do the same on this side. Onto there. Line up with the bottom hole. Might need to twist his black cap if need be. And finger tie again. Like so. Now we can grab our final bolt, the 2 washers and the nut. And this one is going to go through the bottom here, same as the other side. Like so. Now with these 2 on, we can finally fit the last bit of the cage, and then we can move on to the rear basket. So in the next part of the cage, we're going to be assembling. It's going to be this rear bar here. This is going to slot here. So you might be wondering, well, we ran out of bolts. The bolts do come in the end of here. I've took them out, but they do come in the ends of this bar, so no need to worry. So what you're going to want to do, you're going to want to get one end up, lined up with this hole here. And then if the cage is loose enough, you can just slot it in nicely like that. So now you can grab your bolt and you can line this up like so. And again, just finger tight for now. Same with the other side. Bolt through the side hole, line it up, finger tight. Now that's assembled, we can go around and fully tighten all of the cage bolts, making sure they're all nice and tight. So now the cage is nice and secure, we can now move on to the next part of the assembly. So the next part of the assembly is going to be the rear basket, which is going to sit right here. So for this, you're going to want your 4 bolts and 4 nuts from earlier. You're also going to want a 12 and a 13mm spanner. So first of all, you're going to grab 2 of the bolts just for now, and your basket. This is going to slide in nicer here. You just want to put bolts in, should line up quite easily. So now you can grab your other 2, put them on the left side. Nice and easily. Then you can grab your 4 nuts, screw them on the back. And 4. So now you can grab the 12 and your 13. Your 13 will be the nut on the inside, the 12 will be the bolt on the outside. So now all 4 bolts are nice and tight. You can see that's attached all nicely. So now we can almost be done with this build. Just a few more things, so let's get on to it. Moving on to the next part of the assembly, we're going to be fitting the wheel caps. These are nice and simple. You want 1 black bit and then 3 red bits. So these just clip on. You You can see one here at the bottom, two at the top, which aligns for the one at the bottom, two at the top. So just want to carefully click these in, nice and easily. There we go. Now this bit can be quite fiddly, so what you want to do, just want to tuck it in one side and press around the edge. Can pop off. Like I said, can be very fiddly. Very fiddly. So now we've done the rear, we can now move on to the front. The exact same process. And just the clip. So once you've got this one on, we can now repeat the same process to both wheels, but on the other side. So now you've got all your wheels covers fitted, it just adds a nice little touch to the vehicle, making it look a bit cleaner. But now we can move on to one of the final steps of this whole process, this rear net at the back. So moving on to the next part of the assembly, we're going to be attaching the rear net. This is a very nice simple step. Open the bag up, take it out, and this is going to sit just over the back here, from the top to the bottom here. So first thing you're going to want to do, you're going to want to find the little V, this here. So this will go at the bottom. So you want to make sure this matches up with the V on the frame here, as you can see. Yeah, you want to make sure that's like goes to the bottom. So you want to flip it upside down. So you just want to slide through, lift up the tab, and slide back through. Give that a nice pull. That's nice and secure. You just want to go around the whole of this net and just do this with all of these little clips. We've got another one here. So there we go. Nice and simple. Now let's go behind little basket on the back here. Make sure it comes all the way down. And again, around the pole. And on the other side. And our final ones are at the bottom here. Final one on the other side. Your rear net is all fitted. So one of the final stages, we're going to move over to this little bag. Inside here, as explained, toolkit, etc. But there's one last thing we need out of here. This will be your little rubber cap. This will sit over your electrical hole here. But before we put this on, when you're feeling here, as it says on the instructions, you want to flick it to the right, and that will allow power. So once you flick this switch right, you can then move over to the front, and once you press the button, you can see we're now getting power. So now we figured out we're getting power, we can now put this rubber cap on. There we are, and once you've got that in, you can see nothing is going to get in or out of that hole. So now you have finished the full assembly of your FunKart 2000w. There's one last thing you can do before you ride it, and that's going to be a full nut and bolt check. I'm now going to run you through what bolts you're going to need to check. So starting at the back here, there's 2 bolts here. There's a few bolts on the brake disc here. You're going to want to check the 2 shock bolts. You're going to want to check this bolt here. Now moving on to the front. You're going to want to check this bolt here. The 2 shock bolts again. Now we can move on to the interior. You're going to want to check these bolts down the middle. So we're going to check all the bolts around the pedals, the brake and the accelerator. So once you've done the full nut and bolt check on that side, it'll be the exact same on the left as it is identical. So just make sure you do both sides. So guys, that's it. You've finally finished your assembly on your FunKart 2000w. I'm Finn. Hope I've been a helping hand today. If you have any comments about the assembly process, please leave them in the comments and I'll answer them as quick as I can. And before you take this thing for a ride, make sure you have some protective equipment on. You can find this in our description. Oh, and one last thing you need to do, make sure you like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.
Wait a minute!
about the build, please leave them in the comments and I'll answer them as quick as I can. Before you take this thing on a ride, make sure you get some So before you take this thing for a ride, make sure you have some protective...
It's such a fucking tongue twister, bro.
This in again. Ooh.
$2,000 years later. I'm gonna throw this one.